tactical civics is something you're going to be very interested in. So
Yeah,
Thank you. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Robin.
Hey, I'm just going to do just a quick, so I can show the girls online too. All right, so what you guys were talking about was tactical civics and using natural law, right? Because that is the basis of really, it's God's law.
There's like, so
Natural law and nature law are two
separate
different things.
But
And so we teach nature's law,
Yeah.
which is in the first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence.
that's more of a different group.
So
Well, I'm using
but there's also
natural law is
nature
the
law.
Natural law is the philosophy that all law should be based on morals. Is that what you're talking about? Are you talking about the laws of physics and gravity and science and all of
Well,
that?
actually, all of those are part of God's
Nature's
laws.
law. It's nature's law. That's part of nature's law. So we are talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Nature's law is that our inalienable rights come from God, not man.
Okay.
So I just make sure we have the same thing.
We kind of wonder how it was that our government was established with such amazing principles, right?
Right.
And so the founders studied these things, and I find it very interesting that, where's my other book? I'm missing one book. No, it's under here. That Jefferson, he went back to the Bible and he pulled out, I don't know if you guys can see this, I put it up here, the Jefferson Bible. And what it is it's just the words of Christ. So he said there's a lot of things between Genesis and Revelations that are great stories and do all these things, but what did Christ actually say? And he's teaching pure principles. So that's what he did. He literally cut out the words. It's very small. Those principles. And I think you can see that what he did for the Constitution was the same thing. He looked at all great governments that had been in existence, and he went back and he looked at, I don't know how to say it, nature's law? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, and I only correct people because we were taught natural law.
Well,
natural
hold on,
law,
just let me just finish
Natural law
this.
pulls it into legal positivism, which is man's law. So nature's law is what you're talking about.
Nature's
We've
law
just been trained differently,
about-
so I try to correct people.
I know, but I'm just trying to explain what we're doing today.
All
It's good,
natural
it's
law
good.
here.
Yeah, it is from nature, okay? And
Yeah.
so the twists of it, but basically what he did were the principles, and that's what was put into the Constitution. That's why our Constitution can be so tiny, because they're correct principles. And when you start with a good seed, you can go forward. It was men getting involved in these things that have taken something that was so principled and doing, just mountains of law. That's basically what the priests did of old, right? They had good teachings, but then they added hundreds of laws so that you could cross the street and break a law. And the same thing in America today. They took the principles and then they've added tens of thousands of laws. And so it's like you're lost in this fog trying to get back to it. That's why this class is so important. So what they did is they took the principles, they made the Constitution. I don't have my Constitution in front of me, but basically those principles are so simple, they can be put down in 28 principles. So what Skousen did is he took what are these called? When they were debating back and forth, like Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin.
Conventional, constitutional convention.
No, they're
Philadelphia.
they printed it in, the words.
Federalist Papers.
The Federalist Papers.
Oh, okay.
So they really, all the Federalist Papers were the arguments for and against the Constitution to distill it down to the right so that everyone would understand. And so those Federalist Papers are really what our judges should be, looking at. What was the real intent, of those laws?
Right.
And that's what you get actually in Make America are the Federalist Papers put in here so that people can learn their civics.
Because they're not easy to understand. If you read them, they're not easy.
They're not easy. But what Skousen did as a blessing for us, he distilled it even more down to 28 principles. And those were the 28 principles that you can basically print on a card. And if you memorize those principles, then you always have the argument in your mind of a true seed.
That's right.
Yeah, you have discernment. And so that discernment helps you to understand if you can look at something that's like, wait, that doesn't feel right, you can go back to the principles, and that's your good seed. So that's what becomes so important, and that's why this class is so important. That's been the foundation, really, of cottage meetings, and what Moms for America started with was teaching the principles of good government, so even moms could teach their children and then they would have this understanding of everything. So this is just a little aside. Okay, that's it, and that's why we're learning what we're learning.
And I want to say one thing. Cleon Skousen, he's the one that taught my Hebrew scholars. So they're actually following exactly what he said. So when you say Cleon Skousen, I'm like, oh, we are definitely talking about the same thing.
We
because
are.
they definitely, they've been taught by him.
And that's
So-
where we come back to those principles.
Yeah, so important.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Jan, you had one more thing you said?
Yeah, and the thing about tactical civics is it goes right along with that too. Because
Protects
it's
it.
not going to teach you anything different than what the Constitution already has.
Protects.
It's just saying that in the 1860s, during the Civil War, some of the grand juries were removed during the Civil War, and they were never put back the same way. So what we think of as grand juries right now is not how they
I told
originally
them
were.
that, yeah, early
So-
briefing. It's not.
And that's what you can see. You
Yeah.
can look at the seed and see whether or not it's good. Like
So it's
Hamilton.
restoring us to our original knowledge and how we used to do it correctly.
Yes.
And that's what this will do. So it's not changing anything or adding to the Constitution. It's just,
Defending it.
yes.
Yes, and you can see that Hamilton put in a seed that they thought was expedient to have a central government, but it ended up not being a good seed because we get the Federal Reserve and mass power, right?
Right.
So it was only supposed to be 20 years, and then they could judge, but once you have that much power, nobody wants to let go of it.
Right.
So let's go back to the original
Yes,
seeds.
I have 120 slides.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
It's already.
All right,
That's
sorry.
okay. We got started late. So, what Cleon Skousen did write this book, and in the preface of the book, Skousen said that he worked for the FBI, and he also was going to law school.
I wanted to say, Colette is an expert on this. She's been teaching it for 10 years, and that's why. 14 years! Oh my gosh! Yes, and so that's why she has really distilled it down to the principles.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, you bet. And so anyway, Skousen was going to Knight Law School, and now this was just post-World War II, and so his professor was saying, you know, our politicians are so far off. They are. Can you imagine in the 40s, our politicians are so far off? And so Skousen looked and looked for books to figure out, you know, what's going on, how do we fix it? He couldn't find any, so he wrote it. He studied it and he wrote the 5,000-year leap. And as Robin said, you know, we went from a stick plow to 120 years, 140 years later, to being this, well, it was a little 120 years,
Yeah.
to this massive mega country because of the principles. And these are the principles. So, we're going to do 1 through 14. There are 28 principles. There's just no way to do it. And what I did is I took each chapter, I read the chapter, and tried to find the basic gist of that chapter. But I suggest you get the book. I've got a number of them. I think my ring-bound one with all my notes.
Yeah.
But this was the first book that I had, and Glenn Beck actually endorsed it. He wrote a foreword on it. So anyway, it's the 28 principles that changed the world. Okay, so the 5,000-year leap that changed the world. And here, this book should have been written 200 years ago. On the other hand, that may have been impossible. We may have needed the obstacles and experiences of 200 years to furnish us with a frame of reference to what the founders were trying to tell us. Now, raise your hand at any time. I'm not one that needs to, you know, if we don't get finished, we don't get finished. I can pick it up later. So this volume is concise and carefully researched. It is the kind of stimulating book I should like to see being studied at all of our high schools and universities. Now this is Skousen speaking. It would be profitable reading to Congress and the Supreme Court and recommended to the White House. Unfortunately, we know that's not the case.
But Glenn Kimber is his son-in-law, and he
Yes.
started Kimber Academy, and
He's the one that
he
taught
does
us.
teach it from the junior high and high
Yes.
school.
I said,
Yes.
imagine, like, we're looking at the horrible situation of 10 million coming in. This morning I thought, what if they gave each one of them, this sounds a little crazy, but $500 if they would learn the principles
Yeah.
and then take those principles back to their countries, and then from their country, if they want to, come back, if they don't have criminal things or such, but that they would understand what made America great.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they don't really want to live here in poverty and squalor. They love their beautiful lands in South America and Central America, but give them the tools.
Give them the principles
To
to,
go
get
back.
rid of the bad people.
Wouldn't that be
and-
fantastic?
Yeah.
A lot of
We'll
the ones
capture
coming
you, but you
now-
better learn this, and then we'll send you back. I don't know.
A lot of the ones coming now aren't coming to
No.
To
our
love
There are
beautiful
two
country.
groups.
They want to destroy our beautiful
There are
country.
two groups, right? They
Yes.
just want to, like a pirate, take it for themselves.
Right.
And others looking for a better economic situation.
It
So
is
we definitely
frightening.
have to identify the two
Right.
groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only reliable basis for sound government, Dina, just human relations is natural law. She's saying nature's law.
And she was just telling me that Skousen is the one who taught her group of lawyers originally about nature's law. So she thinks that this has been a little bit changed.
Well, this is word for word from his book.
I know. I showed it to her in the book.
I think we understand it's really God's law.
It's God's, yes.
God's law used and found in nature.
Yes.
And it could be sciences or government.
But do know that there is a big difference.
Yeah.
Between the two.
So, Marcus Tullius Cicero. It was Cicero who cut sharply through political astigmatism errors of Plato and Aristotle to discover the formula of happy relations, natural law. We could say nature's law if you want. So, Cicero's fundamental principles. To Cicero, the building of a society was recognizing the laws of the supreme creator of the universe. And Cicero's compelling honesty led him to conclude that once the reality of the creator is clearly identified, the only intelligent approach to government, justice, human relation is in which the creator is already established. The creator's order of things is called natural law.
Nature's law.
I know.
Taking it to nature's
Just change it in your mind. Let her read.
Natural law is eternal and universal. And it's the only true law which leads us to freedom. True law is right reason in agreement with nature. It is of universal application, unchanging and everlasting. It summons to duty by its commands and averts from wrongdoing by its prohibitions. Whoever is disobedient is fleeing from himself and denying his human nature, and by reason of the very fact will suffer the worst punishment. Okay, these are the words of Cicero, so you can understand why it's got the flowery words. We don't talk like that anymore, and it's really sad we've been so dumbed down. The first great commandment. Cicero said that God's law is right reason. When perfectly understood, it is called wisdom. When applied by government, it is called justice. When people unite together in a covenant or compact, they become a commonwealth to administer their affairs under God's law. And this is the first great commandment. The second great commandment. Cicero, being neither Christian or Jew, was able to discover the power and fundamental significance of obedience. He instinctively comprehended the beauty of Jesus, identifying the second great commandment, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. All mankind can be taught God's law or virtue. We are born for justice, and the right is based not upon men's opinions, but upon nature. Once you get a clear concept, man's fellowship with this fellowman, in fact, there is no human being on any race who, if he finds a guide, cannot attain to virtue. So there it is, the nature. Okay.
Beautiful.
Yes. Legislation in violation of God's natural law is a scourge to humanity. We haven't seen any of that, have we? That's just exactly what we're talking about. Is I don't understand why you make a law, you've got the law, you understand the law, and then they have to do all these little, let's do this legislation for this and let's fix that. No, why don't we leave it alone?
Go back.
It's good. So the most foolish notion is the belief that everything is just which is found in the custom of laws of nations. Deadly statutes which nations put in force, they're not laws but rules like a band of robbers.
I like it.
I know, isn't that fun? Okay, all law should be measured against God's law. Cicero stated, therefore, law of the Creator is the distinction between things just and unjust. Nature and in conformity to nature's standard are framed those human laws which inflict punishment upon the wicked and protect the good. And then, are we not seeing this right now?
It's reverse.
It is absolutely reversed. Last night I started watching that documentary. It's on X. You can get it free right now on J6, January 6th.
Oh.
And there was a woman that absolutely did nothing, and the police beat the living daylights out of her. I mean, plummeted her 40 to 50 times, dragged her. She was trying to get up. They were just dragging her. Shoes were coming off, and they are sentencing her to go to jail just because she was there. And I watched this, and they said, oh, they were out of control. Do you know why they were out of control? They showed it. It's so beautiful. All these police officers are up on the upper balcony shooting rubber bullets at the people and then shooting tear gas at the people. And the people are just going crazy. And then they film it. Look at how out of control they are. This is such a scam. It's such a scam. It's disgusting. And this is what we're talking about is you can spin it any way you want, but you've got to have truth on your side. And people are walking into stores in California and shoplifting $1,000, $999. Nothing happens to them, but they'll throw someone in jail for praying at an abortion center and charging them with like 5 and 6 years in prison. Something's wrong. Something's clearly
Can
wrong.
I share a quick story on that with, as far as the January 6th?
Uh-huh.
So there's one of the guys that we on this tactical civics meetings, his name is Dave Coates. He is a oath keeper. You know how they put
Oh, they
oath
talked
keeper
about
away?
the oath keepers there.
They put him away forever. So they were arresting all these oath keepers that were there, and they were literally protecting the police. There were some police that testified against it, testified in their behalf, but of course they wouldn't show any of those.
No, they don't.
Well, they came to talk to Dave Coates, which everybody else they talked to, they arrested. So you know what he did? He went to a sheriff. And he said, this is what's going on. I will talk to the FBI only in your office. So they had them come there. They had nothing on him. They wanted to arrest him, and the sheriff says, where's your evidence? All you have is that he was there by his location. And when you have more evidence, bring it back. He wouldn't let him arrest him. That's why we're trying to
Who
go
was
to
the
Iron-
sheriff?
That's why we're trying to go to Iron County first for the first grand jury, because the sheriffs can actually call in grand juries without having to go through as much red tape. So that's what we're trying to start with.
We have to fight back.
The teeth we're talking
The teeth,
about.
yes.
I just thought I would share that because there is hope. If you got a constitutional sheriff and we stand together, there is hope. Keep going, sorry.
Great.
No, you're fine. So Cicero's conclusion is, as one and the same nature holds together and supports the universe, all of whose parts are in harmony with one another, so men are united in nature, not realizing that they are of one blood and subject to one and the same protecting power. If this face were understood, surely man would live the life of the gods.
That's pretty
Beautiful.
powerful.
Isn't that yeah. Cicero, of all people, isn't it amazing?
Isn't that they all had studied him?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, second principle. A free people cannot survive under a republican constitution unless they remain virtuous and morally strong. So, Benjamin Franklin, love him. Only a virtuous people are capable of freedom as nations become corrupt and vicious and they have more needs of masters. George Washington later praised the Constitution as the palladium of human rights, but pointed that it could survive only so long as there would remain any virtue in the body of the people. And that's the problem we're having right now, is we've taken the virtue away.
From education.
Yes, 62, they took prayer out of school. They took the Bible out of the schools. And so what happens is the virtue and morality of the people go downhill, yes.
during COVID, they took the virtue out of working for yourself
Yeah.
as
Just
well.
send you money.
Your family.
Yeah.
Yes.
It backfired because a lot of us sitting home doing nothing woke up, so I don't know.
Yeah. There's polarization.
This just reminds me also,
Not
when Obama
distracted.
was in the presidency, he appointed all those czars.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about your extra masters that the corrupt government needs,
Oh.
It's like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
that just
yeah.
reminded me of that so much.
And I'll tell you who was by far the worst was FDR.
I
He
don't know.
did, trying to
Beginnings.
remember, 1,700 executive orders?
Wow.
Something, it might be a little higher, yeah. Obama did about 300 and something, but still.
He was building on the 1700s.
Yes, exactly. So, all right. What is public virtue? The early Americans identified public virtue as a very special quality of human maturity in character and service closely akin to the golden rule. In a republic, however, each man must somehow submerge his personal wants into the greater good of the whole. To love the country, we must be willing to sacrifice for the community. And this is the thing I'm worried about with all these people they're bringing in across the border is they're not going to love the country like we love it. They're not going to have the community. They're just here to get stuff. We want the American dream. You've got to learn and have community and love this country if you're going to assimilate. And that's the worry. That is the total worry, Robin.
And the education, they've taken the civics to understand the Constitution out of our
Yes.
public schools. So our kids don't understand. They think community is socialism,
Yeah.
right? So they have the incorrect understanding because we've taken these things out.
Exactly.
Colette,
Yeah.
last week, coming out of the temple, Heidi and I talked to a woman that we see every week there. She's an Argentine, and we were just talking to her, and she came from down there. She's the only one in her family, a family of 12 children, that received an education. And her father pushed it because he wanted somebody to. She actually came to the United States, to Utah on a scholarship to U of U, and she got a doctorate there.
Oh, wow.
But she brought up some of her siblings. And at first when she came here to America, she was mad. Why? They didn't have running water. They didn't have electricity. Why do these people here have so much and we have so little? And then she started saying, because they work for it. They get an education. They do these things. Well, she brings in her sister, some sisters and brothers, a couple of them, and they had the same anger. But she says, no, you have to get your education. You have to work for it. That's what they've done. They've worked for it. The dreams are here if you work for it. She says, my sister ended up a prostitute, my brother, they were in trouble because they wanted the
free stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's the beauty of the 5,000-year leap. It did take from the stick plow to technology and beautiful buildings and stuff because people were not afraid to work. And you're absolutely right. Thank you, Kathy. All right, self-doubts. The people in the 18th century had an instinctive thirst for independence, but there remained a haunting fear that they might not be good enough to make it work, to make Republican principles work. The people had to have public virtue, but the Revolutionary War, or the people were worried if they would have the moral capacity for the government. But spirits continued to rise. Self-government was the key, and virtue and character is really the key in moving forward in life. So Thomas Paine, he was the writer of Common Sense, pointed out that most of the people were industrious, frugal, and honest. Few Americans had been corrupted with riches like in Europe. There was a spirit of equality and public virtue. I got a little behind on my picture, sorry. Upheard or in other nations, because the people are people of property. I put in
Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon. Personal property. And to be every man should be a freeholder. And this is why they're doing the smart cities.
So you can never own what
Never own your land.
Do nothing, but you're happy.
Yes,
The
exactly.
lie.
The lie. Yep. The tide of reform. Many Americans became extremely self-conscious about their lack of public virtue because of non-involvement in the affairs of government. They began to acknowledge their obsession with self-interest, the neglect of public affairs, and their disdain for the need of community as a whole. Gradually, a spirit of sacrifice and reform became manifest in the 13 colonies. Here's the 13 colonies. All right. How the moral reform accelerated the revolution. Many Americans became so impressed with the improvement in the quality of life as a result of the reform movement that they were afraid they might lose it if they were not hurried separate from corrupting influence of British manners. Virtue and morality would be the success of a free, self-governing society.
Yeah, look at that huge book of all the rules. When it comes down to virtue and morality. Yeah.
We need to be self-governing, and that's the key. Whoops, went the wrong way.
You know, Colette,
Yes,
and the interesting thing is that if you're able to live in a society like that, that's what we're trying to do, is have develop within ourselves the culture of the celestial kingdom,
yes,
which is totally based on self-governance.
yes.
Which interestingly enough, you know, you mentioned the 15-minute cities. That is the counterfeit of the Zion cities.
Yes.
There's some similarities between the two, and I think that's why a lot of people are attracted to this 15-minute city concept. But it is the counterfeit.
Yes.
What is this 15-minute city?
So they want everybody they want to have these 15-minute or walkable cities so that we all can live.
Everything's with.
They're all like condos. I said to you on the phone yesterday.
No cars.
Well,
Like
No
a
cars,
bubble, yeah.
everybody's in apartments, everybody's all together, public transportation. They don't want us to have our own cars, they don't want us to own our own property. Which, by the way, is part of the 17 planks of the Communist Manifesto.
Yes.
First thing they wanted to take away was our private property, because that's when we have more freedoms, we have more liberties, and we own property.
And our backyard
The ability
gardens.
to excel.
Exactly.
And then the control. It is always agency over control.
Yeah.
Liberty
Within
over
those
control.
cities, there's surveillance cameras every.
Yes, surveillance
So it's
everywhere.
15 minutes that you can walk the whole thing in 15 minutes.
Well, you could get to a doctor
You
on
can get to
Market.
a doctor, you can
Yeah.
get to a
Anything
train, you
where
can get to
you're
a
at, you
store.
can get to anything within 15 minutes of where you're at. So
And no
everybody
cars.
has-
With walking.
No cars.
Walking.
No choice.
And no gardens, like they said, no personal property, and which will come with a credit, social credit score like they're doing in China.
Yes, yes.
But if
And the
you have to
first one
stay
is here
within
at
your
Corner Mountain,
boundaries, how many people are you waiting
The
in
first
line
one
for
is
the
here
doctor's
at Corner
office?
Mountain.
Or
Thanksgiving
where
after they
people
burn
are
down
food on the
prison.
shelf at the store.
Yeah.
You know,
Build the first Oh, 15
so
minutes.
you're-
That's actually the first thing
Yeah.
that came to my mind when
All
you
right,
mentioned
the
it. I was
lesson
like,
of
I wonder
history.
what's over there. Okay,
You got-
So,
I get it.
Different kind of prison.
is there no
It
virtue
makes
among
sense.
us?
Oh, yeah.
If there's no evil
My
involved in it.
husband had to demolish it. The prison over
Is there no
They had to
virtue
go in.
among us? If there be not, we are a wretched situation. This is James Madison speaking. If there be sufficient virtue and intelligence in the community, it will be exercised in the selection of these men, so that we do not depend on the virtue, but put confidence in the rulers, but the people who are to choose them. So we don't want to just put that, it's we the people.
But isn't it also like people are tricked because they see a smile that looks great, right? They don't go into the roots of who that person is, how they've voted, what have they accomplished in their life. And because you don't have the background, people are voting blindly. They aren't looking for virtuous leaders.
No, they're just looking for the slick Willie.
Gavin
Yeah.
Newsom.
Yeah, yes. What is the key to preserving a virtuous nation? Since the quality of virtue and morality in the character of a nation is the secret to its survival, one cannot help wonder if there is some special ingredient fundamentally necessary to provide the greatest assurance that these qualities of life will be preserved. The founders had the answer, to which it brings us to the next basic concept or precept. The secret ingredient. Okay, the third principle. The most promising method of securing a virtuous and morally stable people is to elect virtuous leaders. And again, that's, I love how we had the caucus system. And then, of course, Mike Levitt came in, his little group, and changed it so you could no vote, what was it called, no vote left behind or something like that. So where you could still get on the ballot, even though the caucus picked them, you could go out and get signatures to get on the ballot. And
You buy them, basically.
well, and think about Bob Bennett. Bob Bennett was a senator for quite a few years, and people didn't like him. So it came to the caucus, and they voted him out. And he was devastated. And so this whole little plot with Mike Levitt, this is what started Count My Vote. I think that's what it was,
Yeah.
Count My Vote. And they got rid of him because he made all these promises and he didn't fulfill them. And so if you're trying to put in a morally stable or a virtuous leader or someone who would listen to you, and then they do this is all part of that little communism thing. So, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, unjust gain, and place much over them to be rulers. Exodus 18:21. Okay, so we have Samuel Adams, and he pointed out, but neither the wisest constitution nor the wisest laws will secure the liberty and happiness of a people whose manners are universally corrupt. Biden.
Universal.
Pelosi,
Yeah.
Hillary.
There's a whole list, probably a longer list than not.
Public officials should not be chosen without experience. Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And, let's see, okay, there's the scripture. And that's where we're so lost. The founding fathers, when they put our country together, they did put in the most righteous and the most moral and virtuous people. And we've gotten so far away from that, it's just really sad.
Well, you know that they were because they didn't take money for their positions except for bare necessities.
Yeah.
Plus they sacrificed everything.
Yes.
Time and their family and actually their lives because they could have been put up for treason.
Yes. Yes.
So you know that they were moral people.
Well, and when we first started teaching this, Julian Jackson used to be here. We started this together, and she and I grew up in the same ward and didn't even know it. She was a lot younger than me, about 10 years younger than me, but I went to high school with her brother, and I knew her parents, and it's so weird. But she went back to go to school in D.C. and met her husband there, and raised their family there, and so she kind of had that D.C. mentality through her husband. And we were teaching the class, like you said, and we brought up how the founding fathers didn't get paid, and now they get paid. And she said something about they made $175,000 a year, and I'm like, she goes, Colette, that's not that much money, and I'm like, what? DC is so expensive, and I said, yeah, that's a lot of money.
But then you wonder, how did Biden accrue all those houses?
That's exactly, and how does Harry Reid go into office just with his law degree and had practiced a little bit with no money and come out and have more than tens of millions, like $100 million, There's something amiss, and so we've got real problems there. We know it's insider trading. Yeah.
Every president in the last 50, 60 years has increased by millions of dollars.
Yes.
Except for Trump.
Yes.
And now they're going after some
Yes.
Yeah, not trying to take his
I
money that
mean-
he gained.
Bill and Hillary were worth, like, when they came out, like $150 million. And they're like $400 million, I think.
Probably.
And Obama came out and immediately, we want you to write a book, and he was given $65 million.
Can I say another side of that? And that he put into law, that was a payback after he had put in that Scholastic would get a contract for all of the schools' libraries, which put in the woke stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how it got into your libraries. That was his payback.
Yes. Yep. Joanna, did you have something you wanted to say?
I did, and I forgot.
Oh, okay. If you remember, raise your hand. I get it. Okay, James Madison, in the absence of angels. Oh, did you remember?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Talking about money and gifts, I've been hearing a lot about Nikki Haley receiving money from wealthy Democrats.
Oh, lots of
I've heard
money.
about that.
Yeah, lots of money. They want Trump out. They're terrified that he will get back in. Absolutely terrified. So.
And there are Republicans that are no name, it's a group, and they're basically like Romney type Republicans, right? They're kind of part of this power. They don't want to give up their power.
It's the progressivism.
So
Big
they're
government.
afraid of the
Power.
idea of giving it back to the people,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the founders recognized human nature for what it is, a mixture of good and evil. They reasoned that if people are to govern themselves, the most virtuous can be elected to public office. There's good and evil. If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. And that was from the Federalist Papers. Okay, John Adams on the divine science of politics. So there's Samuel Adams, and John Adams is his cousin, younger cousin. And Adams sacrificed their fortunes to serve in politics. They both considered politics to be a divine science. John said, to become an independent statesman, one must bow the knee to no idol, who will worship nothing as a divinity but truth and virtue to this country. If you remember, even Washington, when he came out of office,
He's so poor.
he was so broke,
Mount Vernon was, what do you call it? Up to
hanging
the
by a
hilt?
thread.
Yes. Mortgaged.
Yes, yes. So these people started this country and served and lost their fortunes to make sure that we had something great today. And we need to understand that. Okay. Haggling for high salaried public office was repugnant to the founders. That's where I was going to talk about this, but that's okay. Franklin warned that high salaries for government offices are the best way to attract scoundrels. And what kind of man will strive this profitable preeminence through the bustle of cabal? I thought
He used that word back then.
he did. The heart
They knew
of
about it back then.
what's that?
They knew about it.
Yes, they did.
Lincoln did.
The heart of contention, the infinite abuse of parties, tearing to pieces the best of characters.
Before you go on.
Yeah.
That also creates scoundrels.
Yes,
Because we
absolutely.
have good men that go in and then they are converted.
Yep.
Converted.
Greed and-
No, they are.
Corrupted. That's
They-
so true.
They get in there and they find out, ooh, we can do some insider trading here. We know that this business is going to get something, or this business is going down, and then they
It's
put money.
Yeah.
It's
One
just-
way Joel Skousen doesn't think Trump will get in any stretch, and that, I just saw it this morning, Tim Cass, I think, was talking about how all the insider congressmen and big wigs like Facebook, all the big, monopolies, they're selling off their stocks right now, like they all know something's gonna go down.
Ew, that's the expectation.
So-
Go into a recession.
Digital currency, and Trump's not gonna let it. That's part of the problem, why they gotta keep him out.
Well, and I don't know if any of you follow Tucker. So he had Mike Benz. Did you watch that?
Shocking.
night, yesterday?
Oh, I watched it last night, and it's an hour and 4 minutes, and he doesn't breathe.
But he connects all
But
the dots.
It's like, oh my gosh, oh
It's
my God.
bigger than you know.
I thought this needs to be broke down into a 7 or 8 hour, this part, and breathe, and
Yeah.
explain.
You might want to send that one out because it's
It's on Rumble.
incredible.
It's on Rumble.
Mike
Yeah.
Benz is
But
his
if we're
name.
not on Rumble,
You don't on, well, you can,
It's a free
it's on
platform.
X.
Usually on YouTube too.
Is it on YouTube?
Usually
Yeah.
Tucker.
It was so good, and I right towards the end though, I started to fall asleep. It was
How do you spell Benz?
BENZ.
That's why I think you should send it out. If
Mike
people, or just
BENZ.
how to get to it. So
Okay,
that
yeah.
sisters that aren't,
Benz?
it is so
Mike
informative.
Benz, BENZ.
Yeah.
And he said, when Biden ran for president, 7 months before, they already knew he was winning.
Oh,
They had it all figured out and all
Okay.
worked out.
my father was in politics up in Canada, and they watched them place the first Trudeau into office. It was a council of bankers that got together, and they decided who they were going to put in. And in 3 months before the election, they started a campaign, and nobody else got any publicity, and it was all on Trudeau, and he got placed into office because he's a card-carrying member of the Communist Party and a gay, and several other horrific things.
Yeah,
Just
but you
have
control
fun,
media, and that's what
Oh, yes.
Chucker
Well, Mike
with
Benz,
Putin was
yeah,
talking about.
he talked about how all the social medias were instructed to silence our voices. And, I mean, he knows where the bodies are buried. He had all the details. And you're just like, holy cow.
My sister watched it. She's never been as awake. She's an attorney. She's very smart. But
Christine?
No, this
Oh.
is Sherry, my younger
Okay.
sister. And she said, she sent me an emoji about, because I sent it to her to see it. And she said, Pollyanna just woke up. With tears. Like, I didn't want to know. But it's so good. Yeah.
You need-
it's so important.
So it's Tucker Carlson.
No, this, yeah, and
He's on Tucker Carlson. He interviews him, and his name is Mike Benz, B-E-N-Z. And you can go to YouTube, go to Rumble or X, and just type in Tucker Carlson under the little search thing, and it'll show all the things. You have to kind of scroll down and find all the interviews.
Well, you
So,
could probably put in Tucker Carlson, Mike Benz.
yeah, you could probably
And
do
it'll come
that.
right up.
Yeah, and it'll pull it up. So it's hard. So have, like something with caffeine, maybe a hot chocolate or a
Chocolate.
a notebook.
chocolate, a
to
notebook.
write down.
I don't think you could take notes. I mean, you
But
know how
because you have some background in it, it all rings true. You just go,
it's like
I
taking a
understand
fire
this. I
hose
understand
and
that.
open it up,
yeah.
and
But
it's
it's
so
good.
fast. And he literally, blah, 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 and he doesn't stop. And Tucker has, blah, 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 blah. Can I ask you a question here? I mean, he was already like into another sentence before he could stop him.
But he really links it all together.
Oh my gosh, it's so brilliant.
I like Tucker because he does let them talk.
He lets them speak.
There's so many Hannity just
Oh,
interrupts all the
he
time.
asks the question, answers it, and then gives them a little 30 seconds to repeat
Agree
his
with him.
answer. Yeah. It drives me crazy. I've stopped watching him.
Yeah.
But this is good stuff, but I'm warning you, it's fire hose. It's amazing. So, okay, prelude to monarchy. Okay, so again, Benjamin foresaw the possibility of profit in public office becoming the means by which an American monarchy could eventually arise. Not called a monarchy, of course, but an executive with monarchical powers. There is scarce a king in 100 who would not, if he could, follow the example of Pharaoh. Get first all the people's money, then their lands, and make them and their children servants forever. And we're there, folks. We're there.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't come and taken all our land yet, but they're working on it.
Through taxes, they'll take all your money.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
trying to pass something here in Utah
Water, all
Um,
different ways.
that if they do it under conservation, they can take, even without the permission of
Yeah.
the landowners.
Yeah.
Which is.
You can't even,
Right.
it's against
Right.
the law to catch rain.
Which is against nature's law and
Yep.
against constitution.
Exactly.
They should all have a bucket or a barrel.
My neighbor next door, she has a great big one. She waters her plants with it.
I think it's
So, yeah. Putting principles into practice. Again, our wonderful Benjamin Franklin. As every freeman, to preserve his independence, ought to have some profession. And this is the thing is, listen to Dan Bongino, he says some of these politicians are such little sniveling losers. They've never had a job in their life. And they need to be out in the workforce and know what it's like to be one of the people. But
That's one of the qualifications, I think, that it should be.
oh, I agree.
I think they should have to be a mother or a father so that they understand, doing it for their children or grandchildren, and also having had a profession, knowing how the real world works. Yeah.
I didn't know. I can see his face now. He's married to the Chinese lady, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham.
Oh.
Has no
Turncoat.
children. No children.
Yeah, he's a turncoat.
I thought that makes sense.
Yes, and
That
her
makes perfect
family
sense.
are the shipbuilders
Yeah.
for China.
Yeah.
And her sister was recently, they think, murdered. There's a huge thing behind this, and who she was married to. They are inside and up next to all of our politicians. It's incredible.
Yeah. So, this is just showing you some of the professions from the time of the founders. So they need some kind of profession, a calling, a trade, or farm, whereby he may honestly subsist. There can be no necessary for nor use in establishing office of profit. Again, founding father speech. It's hard to read.
I love that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that should be a prerequisite. I don't think Joe Biden has never had a job.
No.
He left law school and went into politics.
In the most corrupt
So wait,
state.
he wasn't he a trucker?
No. Yeah.
Speaking of truckers, they're
Only
refusing
trucking his money
to
around.
live in New York.
That's cool.
You love it? All right.
Truckers, I love truckers.
The formula for leaders of character and virtue. The founders had been carefully taught church, families, schools, a comprehensive system of strong basic beliefs. Throughout their writing and speeches, the founders project themselves as positive believers in a broad spectrum of fundamental precepts, which they call self-evident truths. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Created equal. How beautiful.
So the fourth principle. It is without religion, the government of a free people cannot be maintained. And this is what we're fighting for right now. There's such a war against Christianity. Well, and the Jews. Americans fail to realize that the founders felt the role of religions would be as important in our day as it was in theirs.
Well, see, our country was based on Judeo-Christian beliefs, and so when Obama says we are no longer a Judeo-Christian nation,
Yes.
what
Yes.
are we?
Yeah.
Secular, communist, anti-God.
Northwest Ordinance Article 3, religion, morality, and knowledge was to be the means and education and encouraged. I love George Washington. That's a great picture. Okay, so number 1, religion, which might be defined as a fundamental system of beliefs concerning man's origin and relationship to the cosmic universe, as well as his relationship with his fellow man. Number 2, morality, which may be described as a standard of behavior, distinguishing between right and wrong. And then 3, knowledge as an intellectual awareness and understanding. The teaching of religion in schools restricted to universal fundamentals. Religion is the foundation and morality of that. Both are essential to be good government and the happiness of mankind. The founders set to exclude creeds and biases of individual denominations to make teaching religion unifying rather than divisive. All religions should be consistent to the tenets of any sect or denomination.
And wasn't it Benjamin Franklin who put out the creed of what true religion is, the elements of it, and it's not pinpointing any,
Right.
but it's the elements of true religion.
Exactly. The fundamentals points to be taught in the schools. Number 1, there exists a creator who makes all things and mankind should recognize and worship. Nowhere does that say of any religion. Period.
State religion.
It states that we recognize that there is a creator of the heavens and of us. And we worship that. 2, the creator has a moral code of behavior for happy living which distinguishes right from wrong. And then number 3, the creator holds mankind responsible the way they treat others. Nowhere is there anything that states any kind of religion. These are the basic tenets of how we should treat one another. Be kind and love each other and recognize right from wrong. Number 4, all mankind live beyond this life. And number 5, in the next life, mankind are judged for their conduct in this one. All 5 run through practically all the founders' writings. Religion in America, fundamental for providing good government and the happiness of mankind.
How simple. Those are like the seeds, aren't they?
Yes.
Just good seeds. 5 principles. So great.
Yeah.
Number 5 is completely deleted now.
Yeah.
You won't
Yeah.
be judged.
Yeah.
No,
There's no judgment.
it's just live your life and have fun, and there's no.
Even New Age Christianity,
They're not
those who
coming.
believe
So-
in God now are like, but just love everybody because you're not going to be judged. It's,
Did you see yesterday on the news they were showing Fannie? I'll call her Fannie, not Fonnie. Fannie Willis standing at church in her black dress and saying how corrupt them coming after her, and so what if she had a relationship? And I'm like, you had
In front of the church.
in front of the church, you had a relationship outside of marriage, and she's standing
Using
there.
taxpayer monies to pay yourself.
They started it.
Number 5, okay, all of that's gone down the drain. And it was okay, this was okay, and they were all cheering her and applauding her, and I'm just like, wow, this is really scary stuff. That you could be that corrupt and it's okay. She's standing in church and professing that
Right.
she's been
so therefore
abused.
she's a good person.
She's
And that's
a
the
good-
great thing she ran on as a DA, criticizing
Yes,
the
Who is
former
it?
guy.
I know. She ran. She said, "I will not allow any kind of relationships and stuff like that in the office." They got her saying it, and then she has a relationship in the office.
That's
So
funny.
it's called hypocrisy to the max.
For sure.
Alexis de Tocqueville, he's a wonderful man, discovers the importance of religion in America. Now you're new, I don't know if you're familiar with Alexis de Tocqueville. He came here from France in the early 1800s, about 1820-ish, and he came here and he just couldn't believe what he saw. He'd say, "Where are your prisons?" And people go, "We don't have prisons." And everybody read the Bible. And everybody
They were literate.
They were literate. And he said, wow. And he wrote a book, America is Great Because She is Good.
And he was a judge, wasn't he? He was some kind of
He was some kind of legal, I think he might have been an attorney, he might have been a judge.
He
So,
looks young there. For
the French jurist
Oh, there
de
we go.
Tocqueville visited in 1831, became impressed and wrote the book of Democracy in America. He wrote, "Religion in America takes no direct part in the government of society. In Europe, it was popular to teach that religion and liberty were enemies of each other. America is great because she is good." It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
That's the name of the book, too.
Democracy in America.
Democracy in America. The federal wall between church and state, and I love this one because the liberals have just taken this and destroyed it. Jefferson said there is a wall of separation between church and state, and the intent was separating the church from the state. So in England, they had the Church of England, and you had to be a member of the Church of England. Why do you think the Pilgrims left? They wanted freedom of religion. Why do you think the people left England to come to America? They wanted freedom of religion. So Jefferson and Madison were anxious to have the states intervene in religious matters for equality among all religions and all churches. Religious problems must be solved within the various states. So there is a wall. You do not require the church to be the state, but you don't take the church out of the state. They just want to have a wall, that you're not intermingling it.
That the Catholic Church isn't directing the government, or the Church
leaders
of
of the
England
governors
is influencing the governor
Yes,
or the
and
king.
so,
Because the king used both powers.
but never to take the church out of the state, never. You should keep the church there. And they've twisted it. Joanna?
Well, because without the
Religion.
principles that are introduced by the church, the state loses its morality.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it has to be influenced by the principles of the church, but not controlled.
And you know, the thing that's interesting, and when you were saying that, it popped into my mind, is they also wanted control of the people. And, you know, if you take the religion out, you're going to seek the government, because now you don't seek any kind of religious stuff, and therefore you can start to have tyranny. And it's not overnight. It's a long process. Satan works, you know, he started this in 18... You know,
It's a long game.
Well, and actually with Teddy Roosevelt in the 1890s,
Started with King.
you know, working on this and working
Yeah.
on this, deteriorating us as a society. So he plays the long game. So, but he's actually moved to the short game now.
Sped it up.
Yes, religious principles undergird good government. Religious precepts turned out to be the heart and soul of the American political philosophy. They were taken from the books of John Locke, Sir William Blackstone, and other thinkers who took them directly from the Bible. Blackstone is another one of these great writers, and John Locke, great man. Come on, there we go. The sanctity of civil rights and property rights are well as the obligation of citizens to support the Constitution in protecting their unalienable rights. They were based on these religious precepts. Therefore, having established the general principle, without religion, the government of a free people cannot be maintained. Okay, the fifth principle. All things were created by God. Therefore, upon him and all mankind are equally dependent, and to him they are equally responsible. The founders affirm the existence of a creator who was the designer of all things. John Locke felt that a person who calls himself an atheist is merely confessing that he never dealt with an issue of the creator's existence, therefore irrational and out of touch.
Delusional? I think it's
Another great word. Yeah. So how can one know there is a God? Each person knows that he is something. Therefore, whatever brought man and everything else into existence also had to be something. This something would have to be superior to everything, an element of superiority. This something, the ultimate good, supreme ultimate good, is God. That's why I don't understand how atheists can honestly really think Big Bang and we're here. It just
I think
doesn't
that's
make
what he
sense.
said. They've never dealt with that possibility, right? So you just eat, what is it? Eat, live, and die, or you know, they don't think.
Mary?
Yeah, what is this?
Eat, drink, and be merry, for there
Yeah.
is no tomorrow.
Right. So
Yeah.
that is, you know, it frees them up to have no responsibility.
Yeah. Carol, did you have something?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
Well, I have something to say. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just today that I read, I think, Celestial, and it, you know, President Nelson says, the baseless notion that we should eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, and it shall be well with us, is one of the most absurd lies in the universe.
Yep.
So he just
How
said it, and I
great.
thought it was,
Thank you.
for him to say even to that point of, like, it's absurd, like, he was really blunt in general conference saying that.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
so great.
It is
Probably if you
beautiful.
saw him, if you were with him person to person, you'd be like, it is ridiculous. He would have said it like that.
But it's a fundamental principle. It really is. And to deny it is just
excusing yourself.
Yes,
And sometimes they're pretty angry at God for things that have happened. Sometimes it's just anger issues.
yeah,
really.
it could be.
It's
could be.
past and
Their own trauma.
Denial.
Denial, justification.
My mantra, and I've had this forever, people are stupid, but the church is true. You know, so, and it's my belief system, and no matter where I go, I just go, oh my gosh, they're so stupid. The church is true. You know, you cannot let those influence your belief system. They may be stupid. Murda.
Man thinks that they're so educated. And if there truly is the light of Christ in all things, our spirit knows truth.
Mhm.
But sometimes the natural man wants to camouflage the truth so that they can have the prideful man come forward.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. And not all atheists maybe are trying to glorify their point. Some just really are uneducated.
Yeah.
They have not delved in spiritual matters. They've not been taught spiritual matters. And so they're unknown. My father went to church in a different church all the years of my growing up. And at the end of his life, as he saw I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he didn't fully understand because he never studied it. But at the end of his life, I remember telling him, and talking to him and trying to share principles of truth. And he said, well, I don't believe the way you do. He said, I believe that when I die, he said that it's like a tree, and the tree will be, it's over. And I said, oh, no, Dad. When you pass away, you're going to see your wife, my mom, and she's going to be there. And Dad, when you do, please remember, everything I've shared with you is true, and you will know.
I can't imagine not having that understanding. I guess, we're lucky because I was, born under the covenant. But it's got to be scary for people to just think when you die, it's over. And that's like, oh. So we got to get to know God. The divine creator has a sense of compassion and love he gave to mankind. God has a strong sense of justice and remorse for wrong in human beings whom he designed. The Creator made man in his image. Therefore, God is a man. The Creator is a great artist on the visual plane. Mm. The Creator organized beauty through color, form, and contrast. I see that in the cosmos. I can't wait to someday see all that. I've always been I love space shows.
Amen.
I do. I'm a sci-fi geek, so. Concerning God's revealed law, distinguishing right from wrong. The founders considered the whole foundation of a just society to be structured on the basis of God's revealed law. This was the entire foundation of all the religious cultures worldwide. The early Americans respected the sanctity of the law in the same way that it was honored among ancient Israel. The nearness of God. The founders believed in a creator who is both intelligent and benevolent, and therefore anxious and able to respond to people's petition when they are deserving of needed blessings and engaged in a good cause. The founders continually petitioned God in fervent prayer. They were continually expressing gratitude to God as a nation survived on major crisis after another. George Washington, love you. During the Revolutionary War, there were at least 67 desperate moments when Washington acknowledged that he would have suffered disaster had not the hand of God intervened in behalf of the struggle for independence. James Madison. Madison said the following: "The real wonder is that so many difficulties should have been surmounted with a unanimity almost as unprecedented as it must have been unexpected. It is impossible for any man of candor to reflect on this circumstance without partaking of the astonishment. It is impossible for a man of pious reflection to perceive the finger of the Almighty of our relief in our revolution.
Yeah, it was impossible.
Yeah,
Actually, you know.
It was. It was absolutely a miracle, and God's hand was there. His fingers were there. I mean, you think we taught The Making of America, the book Robin showed you. We spent 2.5 years going through that thing, and it was a beast. But we got through it, and it talked in detail of every miracle that happened. And it's supernatural. It really is. It was truly amazing.
And had that book been, it was made for Reagan to teach high school in, in California. Had that been taken out to the nation, our understanding in God's law, or just the founding, America's Constitution, I mean, what a difference. And that is the hope for the future, that maybe this crisis that we're going to will awaken people to want to reestablish God's law, the Constitution, in our governance. I mean, that is the hope.
Well, that book, it's a textbook. It's 750 pages, something around
This
there.
one?
Yes, and it was made for the high schools in California, and one spot in the book, he used the word pickaninny.
Which is, they were quoting the person themselves speaking.
Yes, it
not
was a
in
quote.
a derogatory. Kind of what happened in Natalie Klein. You take one word, and they toss the whole thing out.
And so they threw the textbook out, and it never went anywhere because the word pickaninny was used in it.
But I would say, if you have an opportunity to get it, this should be in your library. Because if all of a sudden you couldn't have access, this piece of education
Teaches you everything in the government.
is what you would want to teach your children, your grandchildren, to put the mindset in a correct way.
Yeah.
Did you say Skousen?
Yes.
Oh yeah, this is all Skousen, yeah.
Or Majesty of God's Law.
The newest cover.
Majesty of God's Law is another one. It's,
Is it still in print?
Yeah, you can still get it, or you can get it. But these are the principles out of the founders' papers, like their discussions. And so he shows how we get down to that concise constitution, how they worked it out, so that if you understand the principles, this is the flower of the principles, and how our government was so good and lasted so long, right? It is only now it's in the fading of the flower, but we can have, it's a good seed. It can be redone.
It could be give it some sunlight and water. And
Yeah.
it'll start to grow again.
But the women, it seems like, and in the cottage meetings, that's why Moms for America, why Julene is the spokesman now for the Moms for America nationwide, is really what was started in these cottage meetings. That was the whole principle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are really all you need in your arsenal for learning the 5,000-year leap and the naked communist and
Julie's teaching that.
I know.
Moms for
I've
America.
got I did a
Because
PowerPoint.
it's the good and the evil. The communism manifesto versus the American manifesto, really.
So what I
That's
did
how
on
Satan
the
works is he just distorts what is good enough to reach his end.
what I did with the naked communist, and you'll see it probably the end of summer, but I didn't do the whole book because it's impossible to do a PowerPoint on that whole book. So what I do is I introduce and show you how Marxism is created and the planks of the
That's really great.
the planks of the Communist Manifesto, and it's still probably close to 100 slides. I could not go through all that happened in America with the spies.
But those are the principles of
the
the bad
general
seed.
principles.
And you can compare it with the principles of 28,
Okay.
so you can see. That's a great way of doing it.
Yeah. And then, okay, sorry.
So, in God we trust. Woo! Zing. In all of this, it will be seen that the founders were not indulging in any idle gesture when they adopted the motto, "In God we trust." Neither was it a matter of superfluous. I said it right. Formality.
Superfluous.
Superfluous.
Got it.
Superfluous. Formality, when they required that all witnesses who testify must take an oath and swear to affirm before God that they will tell the truth. Do you know that they don't say that in court anymore?
Yeah.
They don't say, do you swear to tell the truth, so help me God?
They don't say, so help me God.
They took out so help me God. Do you swear to say the truth and nothing but the truth? And then they took out so help me God.
So what happened to that company?
Well, so help them God. Said
It's
or
gone.
not.
Well,
Said or not.
The truth
So
as I
help them.
see it,
There
right?
you go.
Heaven help us.
does it really surprise us though, right?
No.
It's all gone.
Yeah, it's gone. And you know, when you think about
Of course
it,
they'll do that.
I liked what you said. Whose truth? But if you say, so help me God, it's God's truth. God knows the truth. And so what it did is it gives you permission. If that's the truth you want to hang on to, then you're not lying.
Yeah.
How frightening is that? All right. Sixth principle. We're really doing, that's okay. All men are created equal. Let's see. The founders wrote in the Declaration of Independence that some truths are self-evident, and one of these is the fact that all men are created equal. How can we be equal? Let's figure it out. The answer is equal in the sight of God. Not the equality they
Equality
want
and
to
equity is different.
throw us this, yeah, exactly. In the sight of God. Equal in the sight of the law. Type of law and order. Equal in the protection of our rights. To teach that all men are born with equal power, faculties, influence, and property is a gross fraud.
Just look at Biden.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Well, Obama was a master at this. Obama was really the first one that came out and talked about, redistribution of wealth. And what does it mean to have equal rights? The goal of society is to provide equal justice, which means protecting the rights of the people equally. And we do not have that.
Yeah.
Look what they're doing to Trump. It is such a fraud against humanity, it's unbelievable. And yet that dawdling old fool, did worse than Trump did with documents. And here's the thing, Trump had the right to the documents.
Right.
Just like Reagan did, and the Bushes did, and Obama did. He had a right to them, but yet they've got to try to crucify him. So there is no more protection of rights of people equally. At the bar of justice, at the public school, at the ballot box, at the employment office, at the real estate agency, at the pulpit, at the podium, at the microphone, at the meeting hall, at the print shop, at the store, at the bank, at the tax collector's office. We all, but even the IRS is unfair in what they do. We have a right to equal rights. The problem of minorities. Minorities in any country consider themselves outsiders. As long as they are treated as outsiders, they do not feel equal. We are a nation of minorities, and America should be called the melting pot of the world. The founders established a society of freedom and opportunity to become a first-class citizen. And this is exactly what we were talking about before, is you have the right to become that. You can. Look at Dan Bongino. He married a gal from Colombia. Her and her mom came over here legally, and she became an American citizen, and she has a job, and she does wonderful things. And people who come in legally are really offended by people who come in and expect to not do it the easy way, they did it the hard way and got here, and then want handouts.
Want everything you have.
Yeah.
That's the argument with a lot of people coming in too, and even people within the church. They say, well, let them come because we're supposed to be gathering Israel. There's a difference. There's a difference between fences and
laws.
and having
They
laws
were
in place
just
to
saying
protect us.
in New York, they were interviewing, it's a hotel 30 stories high, thousands of rooms. It's that hotel now you can't go in it. They have like security guards. One of the guys made inside and realized it's all for refugees. And so they get so much money per room, and it's guaranteed by the government. So it's like
Taxpayers'
million dollar, yeah, 200 a night, millions of dollars a month.
Go and work and keep their money and their food and everything's provided.
But all the taxes in New York are like going up by 50-60% because they're trying to figure out how to pay for the people that came in for it free. What happens when that collapses and those people, they have nothing? You will have such unrest. I mean, this will cause just absolute chaos.
It is
Civil
now. We
Civil
don't
war.
even know what it's gonna be like
We
in a
don't
few
know
years
when
from
it's
now.
coming.
When you unlock those doors and people just pour out onto the streets that have been taken for, and they thought it was their right to have
Right.
that, and all of a sudden they don't, they'll be angry.
Oh, yeah. And,
Yeah, they'll be homeless. And
Isn't that what
Yeah,
we're talking
Joanna.
about?
The other thing that's scary to me is they
Yeah,
talk
we're
about
creating
how
a
many people. The other thing that's frightening to me is they make mention of how many of the people coming across the border are military-age young men, and the percentage of them that is Chinese.
oh, it's huge.
20,000.
They said with last year,
That's an
it's
army.
20 from the last, and then 25 now, so it's 45,000 of military-age men. I just want to make this, I just think it's an
That's a big
interesting,
army.
the statistics of when they did the one-child policy was when Nixon let us in. One child, they got rid of all the female babies, remember, it was all men.
Yes.
Then they just discontinued it. Those boys that were born in that time, they are like 25, 18, 25, I mean, they just did it. So they have 100 million excess single military age men.
But to feed all those mouths,
They're-
they have to do something because they've been eyeing, I mean, years ago, we were filming Roger, talking about what their plan was, the Chinese, and they've had this plan for a long time. That's why they don't want to ruin the infrastructure here. They even have plans where they get their houses and
Right.
take over.
So for
what we have
military,
here.
when you have that many people, you promise them wages of war, which any land or whatever, and rape. They get to then have,
Friends with those
Yeah.
young men who have
It's
young girls
horrific.
around
Well,
them.
the video that I watched that was talking about
pillages of war.
the gap. The gap.
The
that-
Darien
Darien
Gap
Gap.
with Brett Weinstein?
Yeah, and
Yes,
we were-
I watched that. I was just
And
gonna
he
bring
was
that up.
saying that not only are they, a military, they are a weapon of war. China knew what they were doing, getting rid of the females, so they could raise up an entire weapon
Yes.
to be used
And
against.
And they
the
have
Darien
videos
Gap-
of them practicing firing
Right.
in the United States. Firing
Yeah,
these groups, doing
Yeah, police
military.
stations too.
And I'm like, what in the world? And those videos are coming out, but they're being censored.
Yeah.
So they aren't worrying about their next meal.
Right.
Why are you at a firing range, or why are you doing
And at
this
the
thing?
Darien Gap, they
Frightening.
have a camp of Chinese. They won't let you get anywhere near it. The other camps that
pictures or-
people that were coming up from Ecuador and just
NGOs,
they were nice,
hodgepodge,
yes.
this very
But this whole thing, and they said it was huge and went
That
back, and they
video's
couldn't
amazing.
see how many people there, but it looked like
and
thousands.
nobody would talk to them.
No,
Well,
they
do you
wouldn't let
remember
them
years
anywhere
ago,
near.
we saw all kinds of train, military stuff coming
Yeah.
from California and all over, and buying up Long Beach Bay, and the Panama Canal. I mean, they've been setting this up for a
Yeah.
while.
Yes.
What was that Darien Gap thing on?
It's
Tucker.
on Tucker.
It's
And
Tucker
his name's Brett Weinstein, I
Yes.
think, and he talks about it. It's really good.
It is really good.
The people coming up from the south have to traverse this very wicked jungle called the Darien Gap. And if you get, a lot of people die, but a lot of people make it through. And if they can get through that, then all the NGO companies and even the United States are giving the people maps, showing them where all the different places they can go to get into the country.
U.S.
Without
U.S.
borders.
taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Cross.
yeah,
Well, in the
Charlotte.
scripture it talks about the young lion making waste, so I think that
Entering
that-
in the
entering
land.
and making waste, so, I mean, at some point,
Well, Mexico still feels that they have claim on this land, that we took it from them. On the
And
west.
we bought it.
the West.
They bought it, because that's in the making of America. It talks about how they purchased it. I think it was $20 million. Now, you think about that at the time of the 1700s, $20 million was a lot of money. That was a lot of money. And they claim that they got robbed. They didn't. It's just people that, it's like history is his story. And so you take a fact and you twist it, and then you get a belief system. And so it's really pathetic.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Crossing the culture gap. Speaking of gaps. Being a minority is painful. It means learning the English language, the education, economically independent, getting out of the ghetto, becoming recognized, and it requires more time than the group can patiently endure. That's what we're talking about. But this can be an advantage. It expedites their assimilation in a single generation.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So, a nation of minorities. The story of minorities is a fascinating tale. The French in the 1500s, the English in the 1600s, the Dutch, German, Swedes, Scots, and Irish in between was one of the great conglomerate of tension, discrimination, malice, and outright persecution. But the miracle they fought side by side for freedom in the Revolutionary War, so all of this became America, the nation of minorities. And it is truly a story of the melting pot that's so blessed and so beautiful. They all came together, and look what we got.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's a beautiful underdog story.
Yeah.
It's going to be destroyed.
Yeah. The black minority. The blacks have undertaken assimilation, as does first-class citizens under the greatest number of handicaps. In 3 generations, blacks were in colleges with higher standards than a white student in England. However, government gratuities are corrupting and debilitating the minorities. However, the founders would agree with these opportunities. Violence proves counterproductive. In the 1960s, Marxist Eldridge Cleaver, who was a Black Panther, tried to destroy the economic structure of the U.S. so blacks could enjoy equal rights. The blacks soon realized that the 180 cities burning was the black neighborhoods being burnt, and it was counterproductive. 19 of the Black Panther leaders were killed, and Cleaver was shot, and he and his wife escaped to Cuba.
Oh, so much better.
Well, it gets better. A dissident returns.
I have pictures of him in our home when
Yeah.
he came.
After 8 years in Cuba, Cleaver said, "I would rather be in a jail in America than free anywhere else. I was wrong, and the Black Panthers were wrong. The U.S. is the supreme blue chip stocks and the one we have to exercise." After time served, he had 300 hours community service, and he spoke at schools, churches, community gathering, and prison groups. He was persistent to the truth and recognizing the Creator, and left his fraudulent atheist fallacies. Now, Eldridge Cleaver joined the church, and he was a member of the church.
Really?
Yeah. Dr. Klimber knew him, and apparently you guys did. So,
That's so
but yeah, he joined the church.
Huh?
Constitutional amendments to ensure equal rights. Americans added 4 amendments to make sure there were equal rights. There was the 13th Amendment and to provide universal freedom. There was the 14th Amendment to provide rights to citizenship. 15th and 19th Amendments to provide universal rights to voting regardless of race, color, and sex. There are some who insist that equal rights mean equal things. That is straight up Marxist. And we'll learn more about him when I teach the other
Naked communists.
Yes. 7th principle, we got time. Okay, equal rights for everyone. The proper role of government is to protect equal rights, not provide equal things. In Europe during the days of the founders, it was very popular to to proclaim the role of government was to take from the haves and give to the have-nots, so they might be truly equal. Whoops. And this is a huge fallacy. What powers can be assigned to government? Every person is entitled to protection of his life and property. It is legitimate to delegate the task of setting up a police force for protection of life and property. However, if a kind-hearted man saw a neighbor with 2 cars and another none, if he took the car and gave it to the soul with none, it is still car theft. We don't play Robin Hood. How governments sometimes commit legal crimes. Suppose the kind-hearted man asked the mayor or city council to give the car to the neighbor. Does that make it any more legitimate? The founder recognized leveling possessions of equal distribution of goods. The government has the power to deprive people of their equal right to enjoy their lives, liberties, and property. So a popular fallacy. Those on the receiving end think this is very just to take from the haves and give to the have-nots. When the government starts taking from those who count themselves poor, they declare that they have rights in the property the government gave them, thus canceling out the principle of guaranteed equal rights. It opened the floodgate for the government to meddle with everyone's right.
The National Citizen says that you deprive both the giver and the receiver.
Yes.
Virtue.
And it says particularly property rights, which is what we're seeing right now, so much with those 15-minute cities.
And that's the socialism, isn't it? When the
It
government picks the winner and the loser, that's the socialism, which leads to communism,
Right.
which the decay of our civilization.
Yes. So a lesson from communism.
And D apostrophe.
When communists seized Hungary, the peasant given the farm seized in the name of justice. Later the communists seized 3/4 of the peasant land, and they soon found that they not only lost their land, but also their liberty. If they continued to protest, they lost their lives.
We're left in abject poverty.
Yeah. Equal rights doctrine protects the freedom to prosper.
Yeah, that's really the what we've seen modernly in Venezuela, a country that was almost on par with the United States. They get a socialist communist, and now they
Dictator.
have no money. It's been 1,000,000% inflation.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you live? They
Well,
just rob them.
they're eating dogs and cats and feeding out of garbages. They have a wealthy class, and then they have a dire poverty class. And Hugo Chavez, what a disservice. And I told you this story before, but I listed a condo, and it had two couples in there, and they each had one child, and they were from Venezuela. They came here legally. And Hugo Chavez was promising all these jobs, kind of like shovel-ready jobs, had all these jobs. They listed their condo with me, and they went back to Venezuela. And I have thought about them so much. What is their life like? And I just thought they were here, they were free, they owned a condo. I don't know. I don't know anything about what happened, but it grieves me to think that I knew someone that actually would be caught up into that. So anyway, the founders took a different approach. Equal protection of all people's rights. There was no special penalty for getting rich. The French cried out in protest. However, soon discovered the new industrial age required funds to build factories, machinery, and tools, and provided millions of jobs. Making a whole nation prosperous. The American concept of freedom to prosper was based on the belief that man's instinctive will be to succeed on a climate of liberty would result in the whole people prospering together to become independent and self-sufficient. hard work, frugality, thrift, and compassion become the key words in the American ethic. That's it, it's hard work. You know, I mean, my husband has told me his dad really instilled, you work hard. And he worked at Hotel Newhouse, which has now been torn down. But his dad said, okay, whether he was running the elevator or he was moving furniture, he would tell him, you say yes ma'am, and you would run. And he did. And he's probably embarrassed me bringing it up. But that man instilled a work ethic in my husband, and hard worker he has always been.
And blessed everybody's life.
Yes,
your family.
absolutely. And we made our kids, we made them do yard work, and we made them, we
Good
had
jobs.
property management, and we make them paint units, and and my kids are all good workers to this day. So, you know, there's nothing to be said about, everything to be said about hard work, so. Sorry, that just came out. The founders had a deep concern for the poor and the needy. And you know, we all do. The founders recognized that it is to be a mandate of God to help the poor and underprivileged. Franklin showed a counterproductive compassion. Compassion, give a drunk the way to increase, compassion gives a drunk the way to increase drinking. Okay, sorry. Compassion breeding dependency is counterproductive. Compassion blunting the desire to work. Compassion smothering the instinct to excel. The founders' formula for calculated compassion: to relieve the misfortunes of our fellow creatures in concurring with the deity, it is godlike. But we provide encouragement for laziness and support for folly. May we not be found fighting against the order of God and nature. See the 5 convictions. Do not help the needy completely, merely help themselves. That's what you were saying. Give them $500 and send it back to their country. You know,
with principles of
yes,
liberty.
Right.
A family could have $10,000 possibly to start a business
yes.
in their own country.
Yes.
Teach them to fish and not give them.
Yes.
Teach
exactly.
a man to give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for his life.
This
Yeah.
might be a little off topic, but this has been my biggest concern with the LGBTQ movement is that we're supposed to love them and include them and embrace their whole ideas. And I've got like a son who's an alcoholic. I'm like, do you think I'd buy his alcohol?
Yeah.
That's that first right there. Compassion, which gives a drunk the means to increase his drunkenness, is counterproductive. And I'm like, that's what we're doing with the LGBTQ community.
We are.
We're telling them that their lifestyle, their choices, is going to bring them happiness when we know that's false.
Mm-hmm.
We know that's false.
And it's proven over and over and over.
Yeah.
I mean, if you find a group or a person that has a successful relationship, they're the exception, not the rule.
And I don't think we should attack that person.
No.
But I also think that we need to love them in a way that teaches them that path is never going to bring you happiness. There has to be a pattern interrupt.
Yes, exactly.
Can I share something? I just
Yeah.
heard this quote the other day, and I don't know where it came from, but the truth sounds like hate when those who hate hear the truth.
Boy.
Isn't that powerful?
It's
One more time.
projection.
The truth sounds like hate when those who hate hear the truth.
Yeah.
Amen.
So give the poor the satisfaction of earned achievement. Allow the poor to climb the appreciation ladder. When there is an emergency, do not prolong handouts. Oh, you know, they're still giving food at the food banks from COVID. Enforce fixed responsibility. The level of responsibility is in the individual. And we take it away. When you take that away, but doesn't this just lead to tyranny? Because you can't do it anymore and you look to the government for help. And that's exactly what they want. I think we can do the 8th principle.
I have to.
Okay,
I'm going.
Robin's going skiing.
I've got my ski pants. I'm
Don't
teaching.
hurt your ankle.
Yes.
Protect your Achilles this time.
Have fun. Okay, let's do the 8th principle. Men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. The founders did not believe basic rights of mankind originated by a king, an emperor, or a governmental authority. Those rights, they believed, came directly and exclusively from God. When is right unalienable? Those rights then which God and nature have established are called natural rights. In other words, we may do something to forfeit our rights, but no one can take those rights subject to God's justice. That is why they're called natural rights, natural law, or nature's law. The founders did not list all unalienable rights. The right to self-government, the right to bear arms, the right to own property, the right free to choose, the right of free conscience, the right of a profession, the right to choose a mate, the right to bear children, the right to assemble, the right of free speech, the right of a free press, the right to enjoy our labors, the right to barter and sell, the right to invent. And even now, even in our own state, we're seeing they've encroached into some of these things, let alone the federal government. You know, they wanted to, if they could take our guns away from us tomorrow, boy, they'd be gone. They do not like our Constitution. Okay, here we go.
Which tells us even more why we should fight for it.
Yes. The right to explore the earth, the right to privacy, the right to provide security, the right air, food, water, clothing, and shelter, the right to a fair trial, the right to free association, the right to contract.
Trump doesn't have a fair
The
trial.
right together peacefully.
Exactly. And they are squeezing that out of us every day of our lives, and they, believe me,
Because there's no pushback.
there is none. Founders emphasizing unalienable rights. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, property rights, essential to the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson wrote, "Pursuit of happiness, however it is understood," and John Adams clarified, "all men are born free and independent with natural laws and liberties in acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, in seeking and obtaining safety and happiness." 3 great natural rights. The great natural rights are right of personal security and the right of personal liberty and the right of private property. All rights founded in the protection of life. Over a century ago, Frederick Bastille was trying to preserve freedom in France, and he wrote, "Man's unalienable rights are those which relate to life itself and the preservation of those rights. If primarily a matter of self-preservation, life, faculties, production, in other words, individual liberty, property, this is man. Life, liberty, and property no longer exists because of man-made laws." And you know, they used to say, property was, the slaves were considered property, so that's why they changed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But really, the founders wanted it property because they didn't want your property rights to be taken away. And so they changed it the pursuit of happiness. I wish they would have left property in there because it's so important that we know that those are our rights. Well, you know what? We're 3 minutes early. We'll finish this on another date, but the end. Have any questions?
You're really close to halfway through the book, by the way. You're doing this in 2 parts?
Yeah, 14, the 1 through 14, and we just hit 9, so yeah, it'll end up being about 3 instead of 2.
We might have to do 3 parts.
Yeah, it'll be okay though. But yeah,
I was just gonna say, through all this that you were just teaching, I was thinking about, there's bad kings, good kings, people are under terror, all this. And there's only 2 times in the history where people lived in freedom and of God and religion, and that was when Christ came to the Americas after he was resurrected, and for 200 years the people lived in harmony and had no,
it was all peace.
they had no need to do evil.
That was a long period of time.
And then America, and you say, why America? And they were under the promise that as long as they lived right, that they would be able to live on this land and be in righteousness. And the prophet says, we still have that same promise given to us, God, as long as we live righteously. And I just kind of thought, and so what it is the founders came over, and they came over and they came for religious freedom. And so when they did the Constitution, they had their Bibles out, and they were looking, and they said, okay, this is Constitution. And I don't know, it's now the people are saying now that they were out of touch with the world, that they don't have the education that the people today have, like Harvard, and that anyway they're just going along saying this, and so I say the whole reason why is because of the Constitution, and now they're taking away the Constitution. I think the promise of America is going with it.
Yeah.
Our pride is our downfall.
Oh yeah.
And it's getting away from God. No matter how educated or whatever they were in tune with God. And as we become more educated and more prideful. And yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
Joanne.
lose
Gonna
sight of the
disgrace.
fact that if the weather is becoming intolerable and the earth is in commotion, that it's not our fault, then we're in trouble. And we cease to look to ourselves and be responsible for events around us, and to recognize that God is in control, and that these are happening because we are out of line.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And God will pull back the promises if we don't keep Him in our lives and our hearts and our churches. And this is why the federal government is after Christians all the time, trying to take away our rights. And because it's all part of that tyrannical overlord, communism, whatever you want, socialism. We're living socialism now. We really are.
All based on the principles of Satanism.
Yes.
And Satan himself trying to destroy and take everything good away from mankind.
And, I had talked about Satan does the long, I can change things over the long run. But, President Nelson told us that Satan has quadrupled his efforts.
We can see it.
We can see, it's right in our face every week, every day we're seeing new things happening.
They're not trying to hide anything.
They're not hiding. Do you remember when Dr. Kimber, you weren't here, but Dr. Glenn Kimber came and did a class, and he's Cleon Skousen's son-in-law, and he showed us the proof. He actually infiltrated some of these dark forces, the Bilderbergs and the Illuminati and all these cabal people, and they've come out of hiding. They're now right open in front of us, and they don't care, because they know that we know they're demonic followers, and Satan has promised them everything, and he's quadrupled his efforts. That's why it was so important we had that class last week, showing the counterfeit. You missed a great class last week. Showing the counterfeit of the gods, the Return of the Gods, Jonathan Cahn's book, showing how they've quadrupled their efforts and the things to watch out for. And the individuals, there's Ishtar, and there's Baal, and then Moloch. They're all mentioned in the Bible, in the Old Testament. And they have returned in full force. And if we don't be careful, we can be deceived. We have to be so very careful.
Did you record it?
It's,
Yes.
yes. Nancy, are you going to publish that soon?
Yeah, I'm just catching up on.
If I
Well, that one, can you kind of push it up the
Yeah,
top of our group?
And you're okay, cause I'm just posting.
Is it
on
Laura?
website,
Is
like
that-
today.
if I read the book,
Laura is her name.
Because we could send just the recording.
That's fine. Either way, I can wait.
Because I can, do you have an iPhone? I can iDrop the recording. And, but watching it's gonna be with the slides, it's so phenomenal. And you have it, Carol, I sent it out on Monday. You guys need to listen to it, it is so phenomenal. Because Satan is in his mighty forces, and we will, even the elect can be deceived. And if you know these things, then you won't, hopefully, we're not gonna be deceived, you know? It's really important that we know what we're up against. Yeah,
Well, there was a newspaper article saying, kind of taking a poll of how many people that are even LDS that believe that Satan is a real personage.
That's scary.
It was just kind of amazing, and so for
Like that he has a body.
Jonathan Cahn to come out and say that he's real is quite a thing in today's belief.
yeah.
And that's why we're seeing in our wards, our church member friends and neighbors who are falling for all these socialistic ideals.
Well, they think it's like the United Order, and no, it's not.
Well, it's a counterfeit, right?
It is, absolutely it is. And they lull you into this belief, this beautiful, that, oh, this is great and this is wonderful, and you've got to know the principles or you will be deceived.
Even in the Super Bowl, they have those commercials that love is love, kind of love is
Yes.
kind, and Jesus gets you and all that. And it
does.
sounds like it's so packaged nicely and beautifully,
Yeah,
and you want to agree with it, because if you don't, you must be a horrible person, right? And so it's packaged like a Trojan horse.
It is.
And you have to be able to know, okay, but there's a lie in that
That's the
statement.
thing, there's truth and then
Yes.
just a little
Satan
bit
always
that
gives
isn't
us
true.
lots of fingers of truth to slip in the lie to change your belief system.
Well, this is the last showdown, and it's gotta be this way, because every 80 years it went from local to state civil war over slavery and freedom to global in the world we're going to. Every 80 years, now it is, the only place to go is God and the two ideologies, save two churches only that the Book of Mormon talks about. And it has to be clear and played out, and that's why these really, like, everyone can be a Saul turned into a Paul, even some of the worst people that we think. Because look what's happened, like we have digital soldiers all over the world that, are fighting for liberty, and they see that if we go down as a country and Israel goes down, then, but even Israel has the Mossad and has black hats, so it's all white hat, black hat operations, white hat, black hat now.
Well, if you're number one, in prayer constantly, number two, in your scriptures continually, hopefully you will not be deceived, because there's a lot of forces out there, even in our ward houses. There are people in bishoprics that are,
But we all are until we aren't. Everyone's a hypocrite until we aren't.
yes,
Nobody's
So-
pure, but Christ is, so that's why it's the focus on Christ.
yeah, exactly. Hey, and I have donuts over here too, so please take them. Please take them, because
Sounds like you're gonna pay us.
just get them out of here. My son brought this big bag of donuts, and I'm like, okay, I don't need donuts. Yes,
Well,
Charlotte.
if we're done with the political stuff, I just wanted to say that I was shown this guy named Robert Huff. I don't know if any of you know of him on YouTube, but I have been really kind of confused with the Pickering's timeline, because they never come out with actual dates or say how they come about with their timeline piece by piece, but he takes it in 3 different videos of his.
You wanna
But-
send it to me?
But he adds a little bit more of the timeline, a little bit more of the timeline, so you can actually see and actually have dates where the Pickerings just say, oh, well, this is trumpets on this.
He gives
this
us a
certain
date.
year.
He gave us a date.
Well, they do a little bit here and a little bit there, but you have to put it
Those
together
holidays are harder
yourself.
to
No, have you seen their
understand.
big, huge log?
Well, I have it at home.
Okay.
And I took this guy's stuff and actually wrote in the dates into it.
Because Morgan Philpott actually has a 3 year longer than Farrell Pickering. So, because I just watched Morgan the other day.
And it's interesting, his is based off like Book of Mormon timeline. Pickering's is off feasts and trumpet, or feasts and,
Lots of patterns.
yeah, so it's,
So who knows?
we know it's about that time.
We think it's
And
around
Ron J.
2030 to
Featherstone's
31 to 34.
Well, and what is it, the Olympics
It is
is supposed to be
narrow.
here in 34, I think it will happen before that.
And we better
I
have
do
a place
too.
to go before that.
You think what will happen?
The second coming, before the
What
Olympics.
would I
are
just
held
hear?
here,
No one
because
know what the
this
day or
place
the
will be
hour, but we
destroyed.
can know the
There won't
month
be
of the
Olympics
year.
here in 34.
Right. And that's, do you know what that's referring to? The triumphal entry. Not Adam on Diamond and not the Mount of Olives. But Morgan Philpott, there are some things he said that I'm not 100% on.
Right, I don't
But
think anybody has it 100%
Yeah.
correct, but there's enough people who are getting
Woken up.
information and
why
putting
we
it
need
together
each
that
other.
it's like, that's really
Imagine
convincing to me to stay on track.
where were we 10 years ago or 20 years ago? We just looked at Isaiah and just go, ugh.
Right.
And now,
Even scripture understanding is
it's
increasing.
huge. Yeah, miracles are happening. We're seeing it all around us. You know, you ladies are awake. And there's, not woke, awake. And so many members of the church are just sitting there just, you know, next day, not really, I mean, they're reading the Book of Mormon a little bit, maybe,
Not understanding the
but
parallels
not
and patterns.
understanding, and they're not searching deeper, which is where we're at, and we get to see it. We see it unfolding, and they're looking at what's going on in the news and just, you know, shaking their heads. Find me another donut.
I think the thing I like about Morgan is that he likens it to our day.
yes.
And where most people go, oh, well, that's gonna happen in our children's or grandchildren's time. Morgan takes it, and whether he's right or not, I can't say, but he could be.
We'll
And so
find out.
it makes us more aware of where we are or where we could be in time.
Well, he said the other night, and I don't know that I agree, he said we're going to have another little section. I kind of got the inclination
prosperity.
he thought Trump was going to win. We were going to have some peace again. And he says all our Mormon friends are going to go back to Disneyland and, you know, think all is well in Zion.
Absolutely, that's our downfall.
Well, that's
True.
prophesied too, so.
Elon might buy Disney, that's the next venture right now.
And Isaiah always says, if this, then that, but it's your choice. I mean, we're all choosing all along the way.
Yeah.
The whole
So
world.
I think we just need to prepare. Marilyn Light posted a thing on a thread that canning lids. Get canning lids and have them stored up. They've thinned the rubber out inside it, so your
can't
food
reuse
won't
them.
last as long.
Yeah,
And you don't reuse them.
yeah.
So you know, get lots of them because they're not going to last as long. But if you're canning stuff, you're going to eat it within a year or two anyway. So you don't can to put it on the shelf for 6-7 years. So, and I have a freeze dryer, so but I'm gonna go get some lids just to have them, just in case, you know. But so one thing I think we need to realize is we have to be in prayer, and we have to have personal revelation, because I have had some tremendous personal revelation this last 2-3 weeks, and last week's class was at my I wanted this class because I felt it was absolutely important, and it's a key to the deception of Satan. You have to listen to it. I had personal revelation, and there are people being deceived, and people that we love, people that we know, and so you just need to be on the side of God.
And that came from the prophet too, that we won't survive what's coming.
Yeah,
If we don't.
exactly.
Personal revelation.
So, all I can say is listen to it again, and realize that this, I believe this is truth. I believe, well, God doesn't lie to us, and when He gives us even in fact, I went to bed the other night and said, so why am I still kind of feeling this way, you know? And God does not give you revelation that is not truth. And I prayed about it, and I wake up, and poof, there's the answer in the morning, you know, and so just get your own personal revelation. I've had mine, and
What did you want us to
It would
watch
align
or
with
listen
scripture,
to?
and it would align with what the prophets have taught. Our personal revelation needs to align
the
with those
Return of the
things.
Gods,
Oh, okay.
and the Book of Enoch
Right.
that we learned last week. And I had been feeling this for some time, and then I got personal revelation that what transpired is truth, and just, yeah.
We really need to pray about everything around us
Absolutely.
and get our own
Don't take it from
confirmation.
my
Yeah,
word.
Exactly.
Get your own revelation.
Yep, and we really do, because we're gonna be deceived if we don't.
Yeah.
Just sitting in these classes at SOL, I go home and pray about a lot of what is being taught, because I don't wanna be deceived, and I don't want that seed planted that isn't true either. That's
You know,
another
and
big thing, is
when
planting
we
that
bring in
seed.
guests, we don't know everything that they're gonna teach. And so sometimes there'll be things that are taught, we go, I don't think so. You know, just like we did with Morgan Philpott. So take it home and pray about it, and decipher what you feel is truth and what is not truth.
Love it.
That's all we can say, so, yeah. This stuff is truth, because it's just our
Founding
founding
fathers.
document. So I'm just talking about when like next week, we're gonna bring Todd McLaughlin in.
Oh, he's
I
gonna be
know,
here again.
I'm so
Wow.
excited. And, you know, he's just spiritually
He's been coming out a lot more.
one
on
of those
different
deep
platforms.
deep levels, you know.
He does
You-
shattering.
He has the meat.
Oh, he does.
And it's,
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
gospel
he brought the
topics.
concept.
I don't know that I have a topic yet from him.